Is Karl Franz any good in patch 5.0? That takes some revising my pre-Thrones of Decay content, and that's fine. Actually, let's begin by showing the difference between Franz on Deathclaw before and after. The difference is literally 1000 hit points. Griffins were buffed to bring them in line with similar units, and that's great, but that's correcting imbalance, not making them completely overpowered. So, where to begin? To recap, Karl Franz has never had a shield, is armored infantry with magical attack to start with, both duelist and blob basher, and quickly migrates to a barded warhorse, Pegasus, and then the awesome Deathclaw. Nothing about that has really changed, so let's proceed to the skill tree. Almost nothing has changed at all with the blue, red, and yellow trees, and at any rate, the real focus should be on the changes for Franz in campaign generally. As heir of Sigmar, he is now the only lord left with the Elector Count rework system, where he gains Elector Count supply troops not through befriending them, not through allying with them, but by having physical control of their capitals under his own banner, meaning either conquest or confederation. Karl Franz suffers no diplomatic penalty for trespassing in Empire regions, and I think this covers the faction, not just him personally at this point. Campaign movement range is still plus 10% for all armies, his original bonus from the first game version. He's good at being an ally, so plus 25% allegiance points gained, and plus 5 growth per allied faction in every province. As Emperor, his Lord trait, Franz replenishes in neutral territory, unless he is facing overly large amounts of corruption, which often takes place. A notable exception is if you seal the Nemesis Crown. Then you can heal in the middle of corruption as foreign territory for 10 turns. At least I think that's what I saw. Anyway, this is still very valuable for wandering around the Empire doing heroic deeds. On top of this, Franz has minus 20% upkeep for all Elector Count state troops, not regiments of renown, their full price. Also, those state troops get an additional plus 5% weapon strength and missile damage per experience rank, so logically that's plus 45% mass. This means, in spite of regiments of renown being good, Franz is strongly oriented toward Elector Count troops' Doom stats now. In his top line, at rank 17, Leader of Men adds plus 1 to the maximum pool of Elector Count troops, in addition to his old expansion of leadership aura size by 50%. So, for his very personal line, Best of the Empire now grants recruit rank plus 2 for units in his personal army, Lord recruit rank plus 3 for the entire faction, that was the same, and plus 20% unit experience rate for his army, that's percentile. So even without an Empire captain, he'll be getting the troops up to more veteran ranks quickly. Imperial Special Forces does much the same as before. Melee attack plus 8 for greatswords and Reichsguard. Bonus versus infantry plus 10 extra for greatswords. Bonus versus large plus 10 period for Reichsguard, where they had no such bonus before. And charge bonus plus 5 for both. The Emperor's Men, in contrast, is devoted to Elector Count troops. Fatigue buildup is minus 15% for all armies. Armor is plus 10 for these troops for all armies, leadership plus 5 for them in all armies, and missile strength plus 5% for a little more clout. Heroic Knightly Band now not only grants 1 extra hero capacity for captain, Empire Captain recruit rank plus 4 in the local province, but you also have upkeep minus 15% for Empire Knights, Knights of the Blazing Sun, Knights of the Black Rose, and Reichsguard units, and also for Knight Elector Count state troops. Let's pause for a moment. What does this mean? Oh, it means that Franz, even without Special Chapter House help, can recruit various kinds of advanced cavalry at budget costs. Due to his minus 20% upkeep for Elector Count troops just for being Emperor, Franz can support other Elector state troops at a discount. This includes the always wonderful Carroburg Greatswords. In fact, it means that despite the much increased combat power greatswords get under Franz, Franz is financially penalized for using regular greatswords. Carroburg Greatswords, the more advanced unit, will be cheaper, and significantly so. This is partly because Carroburg Greatswords are now 1000 recruitment and 250 upkeep. This is a passive buff for Franz's campaign. Majestic Enforcer has Franz doing the granting, giving us plus 50 growth in the local province and plus 3 control in the same. So even sitting him in the rear has value in it. Finally, an Emperor's Journey still offers weapon strength plus 10%, still offers Unbreakable, but now adds Perfect Vigor. Oh. Now, this one addition turns Karl into a true menace, but we have to be realistic. The existence of Heroic Killing Blow means Chaos Heroes can deliver horrific damage. And if you're not prepared to deal with that, Karl can go down, and very swiftly, especially before he gets Deathclaw. I've tried to rush Festus, and I found the results very iffy unless I specifically forced myself to recruit extra handgunners and showed a lot of patience. It's not that the handgunners are the best, far from it, but they are the floor, they are the absolute minimum with which you can challenge serious quantities of Chaos Warriors. Let alone that plus the rest of the junk thrown at you with Nurgle. So even though Karl doesn't specifically boost them, except through the red line and text, if that's the fight you take on, you need to be somehow prepared. I say this because mid-rank Empire cavalry may be great general units, may be nicely armored and pretty fast despite that, but they are not armor-piercing oriented, and against Chaos Warriors and Sigmar Forbid Chosen, they aren't enough. And for that matter, Chaos Furies are no longer jokes, and I saw a unit stopping my Shock Cavalry Reichsguard cold for minutes without any kind of way to extract them properly. There are simply factions against which your melee is not going to feel good enough, and that is an Empire reality even with Franz though. So, you bring ranged. You bring accurate enough armor piercing and tear through armies. As I said, that's your minimum for getting that job done. A lot of opponents won't make you feel quite that desperate. So, as I went over in my pre-Thrones video, a lot of Karl's ultimate power comes through his quests and his legendary items. Beast Slayer can be a side grade, but Gal Maraz is a big deal to you. Not only providing a lot of your endgame melee damage, but providing a thick bonus versus large that provides an edge against elite opponents, and sundered armor on top of that. The Silver Seal isn't just a great way to protect Franz, but it has a set bonus with Gal Maraz providing +1 control and +20 diplomatic relations with Empire factions, icing on top of the cake. For army composition and early strategy, I think that the basics really are the basics, and a special problem is if you try to deal with Festus. You absolutely require sufficient amounts of armor piercing to deal with his Chaos Warriors and other junk like I mentioned. So the absolute minimum is handgunners, because early game expecting halberdiers to do it is just not realistic. If it was armored cavalry, perhaps, but not this. The late game army compositions are so free and open you can do a lot. To throw a little math at you, Greatswords +10 melee, +10 bonus versus infantry, and the constant buff if you're using the unbreakable Karlberg Greatswords, and grab a Warrior Priest. Empire is no joke in armor-piercing melee against infantry at all at that point. Reichsguard need their special building to be even more powerful, but they're not exactly bad. And Franz becomes powerful, but he's still no Chaos Giant, so you need to use his mobility in a smart and aggressive way to make the most of him. With enough of the Empire under his control, his army will not let him down. Magic is just icing on the cake, but very important icing. Sweet, sweet flamestorms. Before I move on to new campaign mechanics, I want to get over what Franz lost. Never forget what was taken from you, yada yada. What was taken? Greatswords and Reichsguard no longer grant Guardian in his armies. You need Empire captains to get Guardian with Franz, and I think having at least one is a good thing, but that's up to you. In the end, there's a huge power spike with Gal Maraz, the item, and Deathclaw, the mount, so whatever you have to do to get there, do it. You will feel the dramatic difference. His heroes can vary, his turn-2 Battle Wizard is completely random. You can do different armies, but in the end, Deathclaw and Gal Maraz, they increase his battlefield impact that much. I'd like to do separate videos for Campaign 2, but it's important to go over some of the new parts of the Imperial Machination system. This stuff, giving you a serious reason to pay close attention to Prestige, actually matters. I underestimated it, so I'm telling you how to learn from me. Okay, so a quick primer on Imperial Machinations. In the technology tree, the Conclave of Light enables you to do diplomatic talks between Empire and High Elves, Kislev, Bretonia, Dwarf, and Cathay factions. Now, what are diplomatic talks? We're talking about this. So I can improve relations with Elspeth, which is a good thing. Now, I could improve her relations with Nordland. I could also decrease relations with Nordland. Now, if I had that tech researched, I could do that with Kislev. For the Emperor's Decrees, Call to Arms, recruitment cost -25%, local recruitment capacity +1, and if this was the improved version, then it would be +2 slots. Commendation, grant target Army's Lord 2500 experience. This would be 5000 if it was the improved version. You can use this on Franz himself, and sometimes you really want to. Open the Gates, grants 1 population surplus to target region's province. It would be +2 if it was the improved version. The point is, If it's population surplus 4 and you want to get it to 5 to go to a tier 5 settlement, you can use this for 500 prestige, which is not that much, and it will instantly go up 1 point. Inquisition. The target empire region has all province corruption reduced by 50. Now, this doesn't mean that I have to use it on areas that I own, but they do have to be places that an empire faction does own. I cannot use it on Krugenheim. And if this was the improved version, yes, it would be 100. Conscription. The target army instantly completes 1 turn of ongoing local and global recruitment. Now, if I use this army right here, and I get rid of my crossbowmen and halberdiers, I recruit 2 archers and 1 greatsword unit. Now, conscription. I instantly recruited the archers, and I have 1 turn shaved off for getting the greatswords. Send aid spawns a degrading army that cannot replenish, like a bloodletter army, to an empire faction. So I could do it for these guys. I could do it over here. The army is not that good. It is not that powerful. Yes, they can get better, but the target faction's fealty +2. This is the real purpose of this. You can sometimes trip up an enemy by doing this, but you really can't rely on it, but you definitely can rely on that target faction's fealty going up +2. It will go up +2. Requisition. All Elector Count State troops will be replenished instantly in the Elector Count State troop recruitment pool. So I'll show you what this does. And I have to actually use the system to get a couple of extra counts. I recently defeated Festus at the end of this campaign here. It's a previous hotfix, so I cannot resume it properly and do it safely. But anyway, now I have access to extra supply troops. I have access to Swords of Ulrich. I have access to Gunnerman Surefires. Well, I would have if I actually had space. So I could get Stubborn Bulls, I could get Surefires, I could get Swords of Ulrich. I can't get Karlberg Greatswords because they're on an 8-turn cooldown. So, requisition. What just happened? 1 unit of Greatswords available, and the 8-turn cooldown was completely negated. But because these were at 1 of 2, 2 Swords of Ulrich, 2 Gunnerman Surefires, 2 Stubborn Bulls. And that is because Leader of Men +1 to the total troop pool capacity. So that's how that functions. The rest, Casus Belli. Hey guys, I don't like you anymore. I can declare war on them, and I suffer no consequences whatsoever. In fact, an allied faction, Telebeckland, I think it was 9, it was 7 before, and now it's 9, because I declared war. But Sterling is still 6, and Averland is still 7, the way it was before. I had to re-record, so some things were lost. Unify. So if I hadn't done that, declaring war on these guys, I could have unified them, and then they would be part of my faction. Full Confederation. The thing is that these guys, fealty would have gone down by 2, so this would have gone down to 4, which is getting dangerous, but the point is, this is a resource. You will find ways to put that number up. So Confederation is simply expending a resource, and then you spend time putting it back up. Because this here at the top, Imperial Authority, this is all about the settlements that you control. It is not about the Elector Counts being happy with you. If the Empire controls more of the Empire's territory, this will improve. And that's it. I want to at some point do a more complete Empire Buildings guide, but part of the reason to go over this is that the recruitment slots increase in the Stables building chain now. Early on, a mix of Call to Arms and the Provincial Commandment gets you 4 slots. You don't need 6 slots, necessarily. You're either fighting for your life, close to home, less so in 5.0 but still, or you're incentivized to campaign far from it, but with exposed flanks. So it matters a lot more what type of units you have and what opponent you're facing than it does the ability to mass recruit when your income is just not there yet. And how does your income get there? For Empire, trade is great, yes, but a lot of the time having a few extra tier 1 settlements with dinky weaving buildings cranks out a lot more money for you than a few new trading partners. So without a deep dive, money will come with sufficient expansion, and expansion is hard. so try to focus on just winning the fights you have. The reason I mentioned the commendation is because Karl can go through battle droughts where he's not in the right position. Maybe Kemmler has 3 armies, and since you have no lightning strike yet, you can't just plow through them. You have to wait for them to separate and take more of your land before crushing them. Maybe you have to attempt an ambush, but it takes a few turns to get it right. These things happen. So early game you want a mix of winnable battles, and you don't always get it. This helps fill the gaps. Once you start having sufficient mass to do the quest battles early, even with a lot of losses, though Gul Maraz benefits from allied gyrocopters not sucking anymore, well, what happens is that you get Deathclaw, and that's when the fun really begins with Franz. Deathclaw, Unbreakable, Perfect Vigor, you're going to be causes terror in the skies. Therefore, the tricky part is purely about getting to that point, and having the tiny window to grab Gul Maraz from the quest, because even if you haven't put a single point into Karl's yellow line, he becomes much stronger at that point, and it's not close. 5,000 gold and the casualty replenishment buff for 2 turns incentivizes you to do this as early as you can. One little note, the army in the Nemesis Crown battle doesn't magically go away when you're done, so if you let most of it escape, you'll have to fight it again the hard way, so hurt them all you can. And one big amusing note, I haven't even tried it yet, but summon the Elector counts with Elspeth out there and with her goodies is probably going to constitute a really bad day for Sigmar's foes if you're in a pinch and need it. I don't want to rely on something like that, but I do want to be able to use it if I have 12,000 prestige and several armies to fight. With the updated system, you don't really suffer much for negative consequences for reviving Elector counts anymore, so I do it in a lot of places, but I'd also aim at confederating as I go. Long term, that's what you're doing. It lowers fealty of other counts by 2, but eventually, through events and other stuff, you can get all the fealty you need. You do not need to fear confederating. It's just that you really want to be prepared before you expand your borders a ton. I've seen Scrag take Newland from Elspeth. It's Empire. Weird stuff will happen. You need to be flexible to prepare for it. Take care, have fun, and when the chips are down, summon the Elector counts! And do it with a smile.